Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'm Autumn Phillips, the new executive editor of the Post and Courier. Today we have, last I looked, 516 people signed up to be with us today on their lunch hour. We're here to talk about the Murdoch case. Um, we received, as people are registering, a ton of questions 2 days ago. We sat down and went through the questions and decided what we were going to talk about, and then everything changed. So we met again this morning. We went through the questions that were submitted. We're going to try to get to as many as possible. This is scheduled to end at 12:30. If we're having a really good conversation and we want to keep going, we'll go ahead and go for a few more minutes, see if we can take some more questions. And just remember, if you have to jump off, if you registered, this is being recorded, you'll get a link to the video so that you can watch it later. Okay, so I'm here with Watchdog editor Glenn Smith and investigative reporter Stephen Hobbs. I'll start with you, Glenn. So this story, this ongoing story, has gotten a lot of local, national, international attention. Everyone seems to be talking about it. What is it about this case that you think has captured everyone's imagination?
Well, I think it's this bizarre, twisted Southern Gothic drama, right? It involves this family known for wealth, prestige, and power in this southern corner of the state in the Low Country. The family sort of reigned and controlled the local prosecutor's office there for more than 8 decades, and still had ties to the local prosecutor's office when this occurred. They were just legendary figures there. They own enough land to basically equate to the size of Charleston. So I think people see this family that just was looked on with both reverence and fear down there, and see them unraveling in this very public way. I think it's just hard to look away for a lot of people.
So a lot's happened in the last couple days. You want to catch us up?
Yeah, just real quick. I think, everything sort of changed as of Monday, when Sled at 11 o'clock p.m. Revealed that this September 4th shooting down in Hampton County, where Alec Murdoch was wounded in the head, supposedly originally during while fixing his car tire during a flat, revealed that this was actually an orchestrated plot that he put in motion to collect $10 million in insurance money to benefit his son. They've arrested an associate of his, a former client who he represented in some legal cases, 61-year-old Curtis Eddie Smith, and charged him with participating in this conspiracy and shooting him in the head. And so this just sort of drops out of nowhere, and Smith is in custody. Then it's announced last night that Murdoch is leaving this rehab facility where he's been receiving treatment for an opioid addiction. He's coming back, turning himself in at 4 o'clock today, talked to the courthouse down in Varnville, and media people have been camping out there since before they arrived this morning. So a lot going on, not to mention yesterday, Sled reveals that they've opened yet a sixth investigation in connection with the Murdaughs, this time surrounding the 2018 death of their former housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield. This came like a couple hours after her sons filed a lawsuit claiming that they'd never seen a dime of the $505,000 insurance settlement that was apparently paid out in this wrongful death case. And there's been many, many, many questions about what happened to Ms. Satterfield back then. So now that's coming out as well. So there's just a lot to cover, a lot to keep track of.
You just mentioned 6 investigations into this one family. Do you want to run down the list of what those are?
Yeah, so sure. We start with the June 7th double homicide involving Alec Murdoch's wife, Maggie, 52, and his son, Paul, 22. They were found on the family's hunting lodge compound, Mazzell, down in Colleton County. Both have been shot with different weapons. While they were looking into that, they revealed that some information covered in that investigation led them to opened an investigation into the July 2015 death of a guy named Stephen Smith down in Hampton County, who was found with a blunt force trauma to the head along a roadway. Haven't said a whole lot about that, but again, a lot of questions had been raised about that death. Then after that, we find out that there's a state grand jury impaneled to look into the investigation of a boating death in which Paul Murdaugh, the slain son, had been charged back in 2019. Questions had been raised about some law enforcement missteps in that, as well as whether the investigation had been directed away from naming Paul as a suspect. Then it was revealed that Sled was investigating money misappropriated from Murdoch's family law firm. Have not learned just how much money that is, but from sources have said it could be in the millions of dollars. Then of course we have the September 4th shooting of Alec Murdaugh in Hampton County. Sorry, it's tough to keep track of this all. And finally, the death of Gloria Satterfield in that case. So that's, 6 open investigations since June involving the same family. It's wild.
All right, let's get into some reader questions. Several readers want to know, does Sled have a suspect in that original double homicide?
Well, if they do, they have not said. There's been all sorts of speculation as to who could have been involved in that. Some people thought that perhaps these arrests over the last couple of days and some of the information that came out would bring us closer to a resolution of that, but Sled has not said, and Sled has not named any suspects in this. One of Alex Murdoch's attorneys yesterday on the Today Show sort of raised an intriguing side angle that perhaps he and one of the other attorneys had been looking into some possible suspects in that case. The host Craig Melvin on the Today Show had asked Dick Harpootlian, if Alec had lied about what happened during the Labor Day weekend shooting, could he have also lied about the circumstances surrounding his wife and son's death, as he was the one who reported finding him that night? Dick quickly came back and said, I don't think so. I don't think he knows anything about that. As a matter of fact, we're looking into other possible people. Have one in particular, would not say who that was or really reveal a motive, because he said it might identify the person, but said it was a personal motive and that we should know more later in the week, and if they did, that they would contact Sled. So that's sort of intriguing and hanging out there.
Yeah. All right, Stephen. Glenn talked a little bit about the Satterfield case. Do you want to dig into that a little bit more with us? The investigation into the death of the Murdoch housekeeper, and then this lawsuit that was filed. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think one of the things, as Glenn alluded to, that's really interesting about this case is there are these incidents that have happened. There was obviously the double homicide over the summer, but there are these other incidents where more information has come out or have kind of been hanging around, and we've been wondering what more details we could find. So this Gloria Satterfield case has been one that kind of fits that, which sounds like she was a housekeeper and nanny for Alec Murdoch and the family for a couple decades. And then in February of 2018, she, it sounds like, has some sort of trip and fall and dies. That's pretty much all the information that we had been given. And then very recently, in the last couple of days, and culminated in a lawsuit filed yesterday, and attorneys for her sons say that, okay, that there, yes, the mother died. There haven't been many details that were released. And there was this supposed settlement that Glenn's mentioned that was reached after her death. But 2 years after her death, no money has been received by the sons or anything related to any type of settlement. So there are questions as to kind of what happened. And if you look at the court docket, there was a petition that was filed mentioning that there had been a settlement reached, but there was no actually signing off on the settlement. And then last October, there's information that says this case has been resolved, but there's no mention of kind of, how much money had been actually settled or what. So there are all these questions about what actually happened. So yes, yesterday a lawsuit was filed by the sons of Courier Satterfield saying, we have not seen any of this money. We want to know more about what, if any, settlement was reached, and also connections and information that was told to family members of Courier Satterfield at the time that potentially maybe Alec Murdoch, there was some sort of conspiracy related to this case that is alleged in the lawsuit, that maybe, he tried to set the sons up with an attorney. Specifically, that was someone that he knew from college and also was the godfather to one of his sons, and concerns that maybe this was part of some larger deal to maybe avoid accountability for something that happened, which we don't know much about. So then later yesterday, the coroner for the county where Hampton County, where the death occurred or the injury occurred, and asked the state law enforcement division, SLED, to open an investigation, saying, I was not made aware. There was no autopsy that was done after this death, and the cause of death or the manner of death, is listed as natural causes. And so that there are questions about what actually happened, and she was requesting the assistance of law enforcement on this case.
Glenn, I want to ask a little bit about this arrest, and we have a question in the Q&A. If you didn't know, you can jump into the Q&A and send us your questions as we go. I'll keep my eye on them and ask as many as we can. So you mentioned, Glenn, we have 6 open investigations and now 1 arrest, Curtis Edward Smith. What do we know about him so far? And then the question in the Q&A is, how did SLED identify Smith?
So actually we have 2 arrests, Autumn. While we were talking here, Alec Murdoch has apparently turned himself into SLED and has been arrested on a conspiracy to commit insurance fraud charge. Looks like his bond hearing is still going underway at 4 p.m. today, but they've said he's now in custody. So 2 arrests, but breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. So yeah, Curtis Edward Smith, what we know about him, he's a guy who grew up down in the Colleton County area. He, I guess, roamed around a bit working on oil rigs and in the logging industry. He was married, divorced, had his own trucking company for a while, had a bankruptcy. There's been some speculation that somewhere in his family he might be related to Alec. There was an obit that was floating around online that one of his relatives had Murdoch as a middle name. So his attorneys, though, say they know of no connection in that way. Anyway, he apparently knows Alec at least as far back as 2012 when he represented him in a workers' comp case involving a logging accident. And then in 2013, he represented him in a speeding case. As far as I could tell from his criminal record that I've been able to find, he basically is limited. I think he might have had a DUI back in the past, way back, but it's mostly just speeding tickets. Murdoch's attorneys have said that Smith is his main drug supplier of illegal opioids, and that he had participated in this scheme willingly and not for pay. He hasn't said anything so far. He had a bond hearing down in Hampton County today. I believe the bond was set at $55,000. We're trying to find out, if he's getting out and what his availability might be.
This is another question for you, Glenn. Alex Murdoch is under investigation by SLED for misappropriating funds from his family law firm. What do we know about that? How much has been released?
Not a whole lot. I mean, the Murdoch announced after the shooting, while he's still in the hospital, that he was resigning from the law firm, which his great-grandfather founded, because he was entering rehab. And he just said at that point to deal with some personal issues that had gotten worse since the death of his wife and son. Then not long after that, the New York Times reported a statement that the firm put out saying, well, yeah, he resigned, but after we confronted him about misappropriated funds. And that was on September 3rd, the day before the shooting happened down in Hampton County, which he's now charged in connection with. The firm has really not said anything about how much money is missing or how this occurred. A number of lawyers we've spoken to have said it's very difficult for a lawyer to access client funds that are in a trust or settlement things that are within the firm, because there's controls placed on those, and there's a fingerprint, and you'd have to reconcile the books at the end of the year, and you'd see that money missing. However, that wouldn't be the case if it was money coming in that was never reported to the firm. And I think a lot of speculation has swirled around that, is whether he was taking cases or negotiating cases sort of freelance on his own and not paying it into the firm. And that, like I said, the Times has reported some member of the firm told him it was in the millions of dollars. A couple sources that we spoke to said it could be as high as 30 million, but I have no idea if that's the case or not, or just speculation. But that would be an interesting wrinkle if it was money that wasn't coming in, because as a partner in a firm, you're basically operating under the banner, the shingle of that law firm, and you're supposed to pay some money back, say 10%. You're tithing some money each year into the firm to support the staff and its operation and your association with that. So if that's the case, I don't know. I mean, it's Sled's looking at it as a criminal matter, or is it a contractual matter? Some attorneys said maybe it's a breach of contract. I guess we won't know until Sled finds out a little bit more about that. There's a forensic auditor that has been hired by the law firm to try to figure that out as well.
Stephen, I don't know if you can answer this one, but several people asked some version of this question. Why did Sled announce that the public was not at risk? Why did Sled announce that the public was not at risk after the murders if they didn't have a suspect? How were they able to say that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and honestly one that we have. If you hear something like that, I think the natural reaction that probably many of you all have and we have is that there's information that they know that would give them the idea to say that. Because if there was a concern, you have 2 people dead. We later found out that there were 2 different guns used in the shootings, that you would think that maybe there would be some indication as there was something on scene or they had someone in custody that would allow them to say that. But so far we have not learned any information, not out of us not trying, but because we've not been provided any information by the law enforcement agencies as to why that is the case, or what they know that we don't know. We even went to court to try to get more information and try to get information that was redacted or not disclosed to us in documents. And so far we have not been successful with that. So that is a question that we definitely are still trying to pursue, and hopefully we'll find the answers out too soon.
Here's a question for Glenn, and then I'm going to ask a couple questions I'm seeing on the same theme on the Q&A. This is looking at that moment on the side of the road. So Murdoch, Alex, he admitted that this was an attempted suicide. It put to rest a lot of the questions that we had, a couple days ago about what happened, but there's still a lot of questions out there. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? And then, talk a little bit about what questions we still have. And then here's a question from the chat. Has any information been released about why Alex was seeking financial security for his surviving son?
Yeah, again, I'm not privy to his books, but it sounded like he had some cash flow issues, and that if the allegations involving the money from the law firm are true, then he could be substantially in debt or owing money to some of his partners. His attorney yesterday and today suggested, and again, this legal team has suggested this in the past, that the vast majority of this money that was taken, I guess he's admitted to taking it now, is the vast majority of that money went into his opioid habit. And people have raised questions about that too. That's like an enormous amount of money. Like you could buy a lifetime supply of opiates. Is there something else going on here? I don't know. It's a good question though. They supposedly, he's driving down the road, has a flat tire. He's got these run flat tires on this Mercedes-Benz. It was a car that belonged to his wife, his late wife. He pulls over to check on this thing, and he tells him a truck comes along, and the guy spins around and comes back, says, you having car trouble? And he says, yes. And then the guy shoots him in the head and drives off. So the tire's supposedly slashed. You wonder if this was a staged shooting, why was the tire slashed? Was this done, I guess, to throw investigators off? There were some reports that they had recovered a knife and that it had some connection to Alec. Sled would not comment on that at all. If he intended to die, really wanted to die to carry out this plot, why did he call 911 afterwards? There were also reports about Good Samaritan or Good Samaritans happening along and driving him to hello?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, sorry. Everything was freezing. Sorry.
You're good.
So Good Samaritans coming along and driving him to meet EMS workers. There had been a report that during that ride, he had not mentioned that he'd been shot. Don't know if that's true or not. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of things flying around here, and definitely more explanation is needed.
Yeah. Okay, we have a reader who wants to know, why did it take so long? Maybe Stephen, you can take a swing at this one. Why did it take so long for the prosecutor to recuse himself in this case?
Yeah, so after the June double homicide that happened involving Alec Murdaugh's wife and his son, the local solicitor, they call it, might be district attorney, for some viewers might be familiar with that, but the local prosecutor, head prosecutor in the area, did not immediately recuse himself, which brought a lot of kind of concern from people. And one of the reasons is that Alec Murdoch had served as a part-time prosecutor in that office, and also that his family, generations of relatives, had three relatives had served as the top prosecutor in that area. So there was concern about there being some sort of conflict in this. And Duffy Stone is the name of the current solicitor there. He said, well, there have been no suspects that have been announced. So at this point, it would be too early for me to recuse myself because I'm just in an advisory role with the investigation and we don't even know who I'm going to be prosecuting. And one of our colleagues talked with a legal expert who kind of agreed with that standpoint of where he was at. Now that means things couldn't change. Well, on August 11th, Duffy Stone contacted our state attorney general's office and said, because of developments today, I'm asking that you take over the case for me, the state attorney general's office. So at that point, something changed. Now, we don't know what that was. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation as to maybe there's a suspect and maybe there's some connection to the solicitor's office or the solicitor himself. So that is definitely a question that we have. And so Duffy Stone has not said why he decided to do that, what information he got on August 11th, what made him change his mind, but we know that he did. And a spokesman for the Attorney General's office this morning told me that the Attorney General's office will prosecute the suspects in that case, or suspects if any are announced, as well as the latest charges that it sounds like have been filed against Alec Murdoch and Smith. I'm blanking on his name, but the gentleman that was involved in that recent shooting as well.
Okay, I'm going to try to get through as many more questions as I can from readers. Let's see. This is interesting. Maybe Glenn, you can tackle this one. We're getting a lot of jurisdiction questions. Why did Sled take this case instead of local police? And then even a question about at what point should the FBI get involved in something this high profile? Can you kind of talk about how those decisions are made?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a few factors that go into that. One is, you show up at the the case, you see who's involved here. It's a high profile case. Some of these sheriff's offices are, it's a rural jurisdiction. They probably don't have as many people or resources as Sled does. So it's not uncommon around the state for large cases, particularly vexing cases, to bring in Sled, because they do bring a whole, lot of resources and investigators and forensic capabilities that local departments may not have. The second thing is too, again, this family has dominated that region for decades and has had its hand in law enforcement and prosecution down there for decades. So there's a very good chance that some of these local departments know them or have relations with them in some way, and it presents conflicts. We saw that already in the 2019 boat crash investigation. Some of the questions that have been raised in connection with that have had to do with, they found different people at the Beaufort Sheriff's Office that had ties with them, and DNR agents that perhaps had some connection with them at some point. So, whether it's nefarious or not, it's that potential conflict that lingers out there. So you bring them in. As for the FBI, I guess they could be called upon for profiling help or perhaps additional forensic lab help if Sled were to request that. Generally, they don't get involved in things that don't present interstate issues, or this is a state issue. So South Carolina is probably both best suited to handle that, but also jurisdictionally the ones that are required to handle that.
Stephen, why don't you try this one? I'm getting a lot of questions about the Stephen Smith connection. How is that case tied to the Murdoch family?
Yeah,
maybe get a little background on that case too, to catch people up who don't know.
Yeah, Glenn, feel free to jump in on this too after. But as Glenn mentioned, there was a case of a young man who was who I think he was found dead on the side of a road, I believe, and so concerns that have been raised since then about possible information learned in follow-up investigations that have I guess caused our state law enforcement agency to look into that matter. They haven't really said what, if anything, might be connected to it, but that is definitely something that has come up in recent months as a case of interest, of one that maybe is one of these cases that isn't that main double homicide that occurred in June, but is one that there is maybe other information that has come out of that investigation or other investigations that may lend some insight as to what happened in that case.
Yeah, I can tell a little bit more too. So Stephen Smith, he's 19. He's coming home and apparently ran out of gas on the side of this country road, and he's found with blunt force head trauma some time later. Initially, it's suspected he was shot in the head, but they're going to call in Sled, and then they determined he wasn't shot in the head. It was some sort of other blunt force injury. So it was some jurisdictional problems between Sled and the Highway Patrol, people being sent away, some initial confusion. Then an autopsy comes to the conclusion that he likely had been struck by a passing truck, like a hit and run, hit with the side mirror of the vehicle in the back of the head, and caused his head trauma. And but one of the lead Highway Patrol investigators has challenged that conclusion, challenged it at the time, said, what's to say he wasn't hit with a baseball bat or something else happened to that effect. It's been a while. I guess during the initial investigation, there was some mentions in the case file or the Murdoch family, and it intrigued people. And again, as Stephen said, some information apparently came to light as a result of the most recent investigation into the Mizell killings, and it prompted them to look deeper.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's 12:28 or 9, depending on your clock. I'm going to ask 3 more questions, and then Glenn, I'm going to have you just catch us up. We had some breaking news while we were sitting here, and tell us about what's going to happen this afternoon. But just to catch a couple more questions, somebody asked, has Buster Murdoch made any statements? Has anyone talked to him?
No, not
No.
that I've seen. Well, the Daily Mail out of England apparently tracked him down to the family beach house on Edisto the other day and snapped a couple photos of him. He didn't look too happy about it, and I believe he made some comment about having spoken to his father while he was in rehab, and then went inside. So no, he has not made any appearances or weighed in on this at all.
Yeah. Okay, we have a couple questions about Smith and that arrest. One, has Smith admitted to anything?
So he had acknowledged, according to Sled, that he was present at the shooting and that he got rid of the gun afterward. The affidavits spell out a case where he takes the gun to some unknown location and disposes of it. Warrants did not indicate that he acknowledged actually shooting Alec Murdoch.
Okay. And then what would Smith have gained, monetarily if he had been successful with that killing? Do we know anything about what that financial agreement was?
So according to the attorneys, there was no compensation at all. That he just did so willfully as a favor to this guy who was one of his drug clients, according to the attorneys. That would seem to be taking on an enormous responsibility, basically looking at a murder rap if he's caught and there's no one around to sort of say, oh, I asked him to do it. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around doing that for somebody. But that's what they said has happened. Hopefully we'll know more about that soon.
All right. I'm going to wrap up taking the questions, and just, Glenn, why don't you close us out with what's going to happen today, what's already happened while we were, in fact, just sitting here.
Yeah, just to reiterate to anyone that came in late, I guess, is Alec Murdoch has turned himself in already to Sled and been charged with this conspiracy to commit insurance fraud charge. They had a warrant waiting for him. He's got a bond hearing scheduled for 4 p.m., which will probably be quite the event down there for this tiny magistrate courthouse with lots of COVID restrictions. So I guess we'll see what happens there. Again, we're going to try to cover all the angles of this. We're well suited to do this. As the largest paper in the state, we got a lot of people working on this. We're trying to leverage all the different relationships we have in a whole bunch of different cities to get the latest information and bring it to the readers. It's a challenging case. I mean, stuff is happening every time we turn around, but we're digging deep. And while you can't help but be distracted by the latest breaking events, there are a number of threads like the Gloria Satterfield case and the Stephen Smith case that that bear some serious looking into. So we're just staying the course on that and trying to find out as much as we can about those investigations as well. And so stay tuned, and we'll bring those to you as soon as we can. Thank
you. To everybody who's on this one, you're going to get a email with a recording of this webinar. Someone suggested that we could probably do this again in a month, and it would be completely fresh set of information. If you aren't already signed up for our breaking news newsletter, go on our website, postandcourier.com/newsletter-sign up, and sign up for that. We send everything out that way. We also have an app that does push alerts to your phone, and we push all the Murdoch stories. Otherwise, thank you very much for being here.